Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug, as always, with my mom, Sister Sharon. I'm with my brother Dennis here and brother Yahusha. We are doing a study today called Who Are the Ebionites? So we're going to be discussing who are these weird sect of people that a lot of the times they're looked at as positive because they had a strict adherence to the Torah. A lot of times they're looked at it as positive because they were pro-Torah. They were one of the few Christian sects of the I would say late second century into first century common era or AD that most people talk about in Christianity as like, they usually demonize them for the wrong things about the Torah adherence. And that's why people in this walk like idolize these Ebionites guys and other groups like the Essenes and all that. But the problem is that their idea on a lot of things, their theology, maybe not in Torah keeping, but their theology of who the Messiah is supposed to be, who the Messiah is, as what Christianity calls Christology. Their, lack for a better word, forgive me for lack of a better term, their Christology, the nature of Yahusha, who he's supposed to be, was way off, extremely off. So that's what this study is going to really be focusing on, is their theology, not whether they kept the Torah. We know they kept the Torah. We know they had strict adherence to the Torah and all that. That's not the problem. The problem is what they believed that the Messiah was supposed to be. So I'm going to read for you guys. This is what Christians would use the term orthodox, original idea of what scripturally the Messiah was supposed to be. So, according to the Second Temple time period and prior, just you can find in the Tanakh, this is what the Tanakh would hint at the Messiah was supposed to be, and what even later on, the 600 BC to 100 BC Second Temple time period, they understood the Messiah as. So, this is the Targum of Isaiah right here. This on the back here, the author of this translation quotes the guy who found the manuscript, and it says here, Zivi Nasi, son of an Orthodox Jewish rabbi in the early 1800s, made an astounding discovery. This mind-bending and life-changing information was to be found in Targum Isaiah, an ancient Yahudim text credited to Jonathan ben Uziel from over 2,000 years ago. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, ben Uziel was Hillel's distinguished pupil. Okay, yada, yada, yada. Now you can read for yourself the volume that completely revolutionized Nasi's life. Nasi was so impressed with the message of Targum Isaiah that he translated that Targum into English. The volume hold in your hands contains the English text, Targum of Isaiah, and of course it has the World English Bible along with it, and the JPS Tanakh of the Masoretic. So it has like three versions of Isaiah in it. As it was trustworthily translated from most accepted Yahudim sources, along with a Yahudim and Messianic parallel text for you to compare. In your studies, you can uncover the amazing truth for yourself that Nasi was so excited about. What truth is that? Ben Uziel taught in the early synagogues, so this would be, you're even talking about as late as 100 AD, okay, believed in a divine Messiah. Here's the quote from Targum Isaiah. And this is Isaiah 9:6 from the Targum. The prophet said to the house of David, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Okay, pre-existence, son is given. He has taken the law upon himself to keep it. His name is called from eternity, meaning he's eternal. Wonderful, the mighty Eluah, who lives to eternity, means he doesn't have a beginning, he doesn't have an end. The Messiah, whose peace shall be great upon us in his days. And so Zivi exclaimed about this and many other treasures of the volume. If the doctrines of Ben Uziel are considered by the synagogue to be inspired, which they are, it follows that the present Judaism faith cannot be the faith of their ancestors. So, which means that even when you look at the Ebionite belief system, it can't be what the original Israelites believed in. Mm-hmm. Because they have somewhat what you would call somewhat Jewish understandings of the messianic expectations. So, as that as our foundation, we know what the scriptures say about the Messiah, and that again he's supposed to be Emmanuel, Eluah with us. Okay, Also in Isaiah 7:14, we already see that the Messiah is supposed to be more than just a mere man. All right, so we know that for a fact. As far as even to say it's supposed to be the Almighty with us in human form. Okay, so keep that in context. Okay, that's what they expected, and that's actually what they got. They just rejected it. They rejected the person. What they expected to be the Messiah, that's who Yahusha came as, and they rejected him. So again, the idea of this just mortal man, right guy at right time, that is what you would call a revisionist historical belief system. They revised their own belief system because they didn't agree with the idea of Messiah being one with the Creator. There was some reason they were against that, whether it was the emergence of Trinitarian theology later on or whatever. But they were very against that. So just to give you even a couple of these are just common, well-known beliefs that these guys had that we're going to talk about. One of the things that I just found out just right before we started, I didn't even realize, is that I don't know why this speaker is like low for some reason. All right. All right. So hopefully you can hear me a little bit better now. If not, I'll have to fix that. Um, but yeah, so I might need to actually use the microphone if it's going to be this low, the volume. Hold on a second, guys. Um, yeah, it always happens with this. I always have issues with these inner mics not being loud enough. So, no, 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 I can survey you. No, no, that. All right. So just bear with me, guys. I'm about to fix this problem right now. Okay. So, all right. Let's see here. Let me put this USB hub connected here so that I can have a port to be able to connect this microphone because it's too low. I can even tell from my side the audio coming out is too low. There we go. All right. This okay. All right. Let me just see here. Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear me better now. If not, I'll have to fix the settings if not. So let me see here. Yeah, I'm noticing like a issue with there's gotta be audio settings here. Yeah, let me see here why this is that. Input volume. Oh, I see what's happening. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that should be a lot better. Okay. That should be a lot better. Um, okay, so that should be fixed. Okay. So, okay. All right. Now it should be fixed, guys. You should be able to hear me perfectly. All right. So let me just see here. Yeah, perfect. Perfect, guys. All right. So back to the topic at hand, right? So we go to just this link here. So, okay, so one of the biggest things I didn't realize they believed in was called adoptionism, which again is another modern Unitarian belief system in Christianity you still see today. What is the idea that Yahusha wasn't originally the father's son, supposedly, that he was a mortal man that got adopted as Yahuwah's begotten son, which again, we're going to go into the scripture showing that that's not the case. He was always the son. He always was from the beginning of time. It's just the way it goes. Okay. And then this is like almost like a cosmic Christ type of idea. Um, the angelic being view. Some sources state that the Ebionites believed, and probably later Ebionites is when this came into probably circulation, believed Yahusha was a heavenly being or a great archangel who was sent to earth, while others commonly described him as simply a man who was chosen by Elua, which is funny because the angelic view, actually, you see multiple cults that believe this. This would be the Jehovah Witnesses. This would be the Kabbalists that portray Yahusha as this Metatron character. And the Jehovah Witnesses think he's Michael. So this is funny. I kind of wonder if Joseph Smith and guys like him and Charles Taze Russell were somehow involved with, or even source these heretical texts from these Ebionite people, because it's kind of funny that all of a sudden all these different religions somehow agree on something like this. So it's very weird to me. And you see, if you look at Joseph Smith's writings, he was a Gnostic. He was a flat out Gnostic. So the Gnostics themselves claim him as their prophet. Okay. But adoptionism is really bad. I mean, that completely denies the sonship. You want to talk about denying
Hmm.
sonship? You're basically saying he was a mortal man, just like me, Josh, brother Yahusha, Dennis, regular mortal man, nothing different about him until Yahuwah supposedly adopted him because of his strict adherence to the Torah. So what I'm trying to say is the Ebionites' idea of a Messiah
Hmm.
is a Jewish understanding. It's not a understanding based on the Tanakh or especially the Brit. The Brit Hadashah, the New Testament would completely debunk that idea. That's just a regular man that was strictly adhering to the Torah. And I see people today in a weird way promoting that, maybe not directly, but when you say the son is the son, the father's the father, and the son was a that Yahuwah sent him as a savior, and and
Hmm.
and you're almost like halfway going into a Unitarian theology. You're not fully there, but you're already starting to stoop down into that type of theology with people today that want to try to reinterpret what it means to be the son of Yahuwah. And so that's something I want to bring up too, because it kind of ties into this whole expose here. The Hebrews' understanding on the what it means to be the only begotten son. I just want to see like, yeah. So again, this is not my opinion. This is what the Hebrews believed, the Israelites, okay? It as referenced in the Bible views Yahuwah's only begotten son not in a literal physical sense, but as a not what they mean by not in a literal physical sense, they mean not in a human understanding sense, okay? But as a declaration of unique heavenly relationship and exalted status, okay? So that's what it means to be the only begotten, only special, unique, only begotten son of Yahuwah. It doesn't mean he's a regular messenger, doesn't mean he's just a son, okay, as a human father son status. So this is what the Hebrews believed way before Yahushua even came. That was the messianic expectation. So there is no historical backing to what the Unitarians try to promote as the son of Yahuwah, or what these non-oneness people say today as the son. Okay, or he's just a unique son that is lesser than the father. That was not even in a Hebrew's mindset back then. Okay, that was not. They wouldn't even entertain that type of thought or that type of doctrine. Okay, they understood that if you're the son of something, in that sense, in that type of context, you're the every embodiment of that something. You're the visual representation of that same exact thing. So it's not like I'm a human father and I got a human son that somewhat is in my likeness, but he's not exactly the same. No, it's not like that. It's different. So again, there and I mean it's very clear when you look at the book of Hebrews, John and all that. But again, I don't want to get too off topic, but I'm just saying this is something that Unitarians and the early Unitarian sect of the Ebionites believe. They believe the opposite of what literally is the historical understanding of the only begotten. Okay, they would have tried to humanize it. They would have tried to even go as far as to say Yahusha wasn't always the son. He had to be adopted by his Torah adherence to the Torah. So that's one of their false doctrines. That was very heretical. Um, so let me see here if I can go back to what their other heretical stuff is. They rejected Yahusha's any type of idea that Yahusha would have been the fullness of Yahuwah, they would have rejected. Ebionites were strict monotheists who rejected the idea of the Trinity and belief that Yahusha was, lack for a better word, divine. So again, because you probably had Trinitarians already starting at that point. You had people like the Ebionites that didn't want to be considered even in the same breath as Trinitarians, so they went the opposite error. And so both Trinitarianism and this idea is both heretical. It's both heretical because Yahusha is the Most High in human flesh. He says it's said multiple times in the New Testament, multiple times. Okay, Colossians 2:9, for example, he is the fullness. Now, we cannot be the fullness of Yahuwah in human form. The fullness of Yahuwah in human form means that he was fully Yahuwah as a human. We are not that. So again, that would show that he's obviously much more than a regular prophet. He's much more than a Moses or a King Solomon, okay? Um
Or
so
King David for that
yeah,
matter.
or King David. And then there's another heresy they believed in. They denied the virgin birth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they believed that he was a regular human being that was originated in Miriam's womb, natural birth of Joseph and Mary. So again, these guys would have held to Pharisaical doctrine. And I want to look something up real quick because some people claim that they might have been actual a sect of the Pharisees. Let me see here, which would have been interesting because there were believing Pharisees. So let me just see here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, were Ebionites a sect? Now, the reason that they probably weren't, now that I'm thinking about it, is if they're post 70 AD.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, probably not. Okay, yeah. So, but yet they had similar beliefs. Okay. I think why people confuse them with the Pharisees or confuse them as a sect of the Pharisees is the virgin birth. Um, hmm. Okay. I would agree and disagree with this point that the Pharisees would differ from this view. I believe the Pharisees would agree with the view that Yahusha's birth was a natural birth. They didn't believe he was born of a virgin birth. So there's parts of that view that do are shared with the Pharisees. So I wonder if, even though they're a later group of people, if they had if there was some type of pharisaical influence on them. Yeah, this would have been the main difference that they had from the Pharisees. They reject animal sacrifices. Which again it goes back to this is why I thought, and I think Brother Yahusha would agree, this is why we thought they might have been living at Qumran because they rejected the animal sacrifices, and there's many works found at the Qumran caves that talk about, religious veganism Animal sacrifices supposedly were never commanded. So that seems to be a problem when you look at the Dead Sea Scroll extra biblical literature, is that possibly you had similar sects to the Ebionites that were maybe pre Ebionite type of sect that believed in similar things, because the I forget if it's the Damascus document or one of the Zadokite fragments, they talk about similar things. So that seems to be a really heretical belief system around the first century that was being promoted a lot. Like, you can't eat animals, you shouldn't eat animals, you shouldn't kill animals for sacrifices. That was very big at that time. And I think that's why Paul said what he said in First Timothy 4, that in the later days you're going to see this happening. Probably because it was already happening and Yahusha was inspiring Paul to write about it and to warn people that there would be these heretical people that are preaching doctrines of demons, telling you that, Yahuwah never commanded animal sacrifices and all that. So that this is like the type of stuff that Ebionites believed in. And Brother Yahusha helped me here. So there is historical no, there's historical evidence from the early Circe fathers as to where they resided. The evidence consistently points to them being set apart in the areas of the Transjordan east of Jordan River, Syria, particularly following the Yahudim Roman wars. Primarily dwelling locations, main historical sources that address the location of the Ebionites, as are the writings of the early Circe fathers, who were often categorized as various heresies or non-mainstream Christian groups. Pella Transjordan, this is most cited, frequently cited starting point, early Christian tradition, recorded by historians like Eusebius of Caesarea, writing in the 4th century, holds that the main body of the Jewish Christians from whom the Ebionites are believed to have descended fled from Jerusalem to the city of Pella in the region of Perea, Transjordan, just before the Roman siege of 70 CE. Syria and Transjordan. So the Circe fathers who lived closer to the region confirmed their continued presence there. Irenaeus of Lyons, writing around 180 AD, knew of them and provided no specific geographical details, implying they are a known entity in the wider East. Epiphanius, writing in the 4th century, himself a native of Palestine, is most specific. He states that the Ebionites were active in the vicinity of Pelah and in the region of the Bashan in Transjordan. He also mentions their presence in places like Cyprus, Asia Minor, but their concentration was in eastern regions, against I guess across Judea. That means adjacent. Nature of evidence. The evidence is not archaeological, like the definitive settlement of Quran, but literally patristic. These writers were focused on their theological errors rather than their geography, but their mentions consistently placed the sect of the Yahudim communities east and north of Judea. The Ebionites were seen as maintaining their traditional Yahudim identity while accepting Yahushua as the Messiah, though denying, and this is the big thing, denying that he is the fullness of the supreme being. So they preached another Yahusha. That's the problem, which would naturally keep them rooted in the Yahudim diasporic communities of the Levant that continue to function at the destruction of the temple. Historical consensus is that they are localized, somewhat scattered movement, concentrated area, Syria, Palestine, and Transjordan. Okay, yada yada yada. 1st century to the 5th century. Ebionites sometimes were to as Nazareans were referred to. So this is my where I start here. Ebionites were sometimes referred to as Nazareans and were a distinct hybrid Jewish Christian sect from 70 AD up to 400 AD. They rejected the Yahusha proclaimed in the scriptures. What I mean by that, they reject the Yahusha of the book of Revelations.
They reject the Yahusha of the book of Jude. They would reject the Yahusha of Mark, Luke, John, any of the Basora accounts that show Yahusha as the Father in human flesh. Okay, they rejected that. They had their own idea of Yahusha, which in a weird way represents more like Christ consciousness, would represent like an extremely righteous man that became the Messiah when the Spirit descended on him. So again, that's like it's almost like when you hear people talking about the New Age Jesus and they talk about Christ consciousness and that oh I had a what do they call them? Spirit guide that I ascended with my spirit guide. It's almost like it's not fully like that, but it's similar to that where they think that a spirit has to enter him to make him the Messiah. Where in actuality, Yahusha is Yahuwah in human form. So the spirit would have always been there. If Yahuwah is the spirit, he would have always been in that body from the time that embryo was created in the womb. So that's what people don't understand. They limit Yahuwah, okay? If Yahuwah says by his spirit she'll conceive, that means the virgin birth by default means that you have Emmanuel, Yahuwah in that baby already, like Yahusha pre-existent entering that embryo. So basically, what I'm trying to say is Yahusha is that spirit. Our bodies are just a body. It's just a vessel. Our bodies are not us. We are we are to become a living being, you have to have a spirit and a body to make a soul. So you like the idea like go ahead, brother.
I think that when people read the verse where it says, "Whom you see the dove descending upon," who I don't know if it says dove or it says Ruach Kadash, but I know it. Oh, whom you see the Ruach Kadash like a dove descending upon, it says that this is basically this is the one that you're looking for. This is the Messiah. Um,
Yeah.
Speaking to John, but it doesn't say whom you see this sign happen, he will become the Messiah. It says this is the person. And it's very possible that when that was said, it was given as a sign to Yehukanan. Um, not that okay, the spirit is actually now descending and entering Yahusha. Um, Not that it isn't already there, but it was a sign that was John was, what I'm trying to say. It was a sign that
Yeah.
John was allowed to see so that he knew that okay, this is the Messiah, not that this is the man that's becoming Messiah. Maybe you could reword
Yeah.
my words.
Yeah, so yeah, I see what you're hinting at. The basically John was not trying to say that okay, this is the man that will become the Messiah when the Spirit enters him. He's trying to get, like you said, give a sign, a miracle, a miraculous sign to show who the Messiah is to John or to his followers to find Yahusha. He gave the sign that this will happen. So yeah, it's just a sign. It's not like him transforming. The
And just like,
Gnostic. Yep, go ahead.
sorry, just to add to that, just like you said, just because you see the spirit descending doesn't mean that the spirit wasn't already there. If he can be at multiple places at multiple times, at all times, then he can be in Yahusha and still allow you to see him coming down as a dove.
Yep. And we have proof of this when the birth was happening in Matthew, I think it is. A lot of people don't pay attention to this, but Yahusha pre-incarnate came to Joseph while that embryo is already created, while that embryo is already being created in Miriam's womb, becoming pregnant. You still have Malak Yahuwah coming to Joseph, telling him, just don't worry. This is conceived of the set apart spirit, what you see in your wife. So you, like you said, Yahuwah can be multiple places at once. Yahusha can be multiple places at once. He's pre-incarnate as Malak Yahuwah talking to Yosef about Miriam's, Miriam being conceived. After the fact, she's already conceived. So you would have once she's conceived, like it says in Psalms 40, a body has been prepared for me. He's already in that body. While there's a portion of his spirit in Malak Yahuwah coming to Joseph. So he's at two places at once. So and this is why in the second temple time period they had this oneness belief system that they called the two powers in heaven. Because it was as simple as this: you had the spirit version of Yahuwah, then you had this other version of Yahuwah, Malak Yahuwah, that would come to earth, or Dabar Yahuwah that would come to earth. And he basically was the representative of the Father, a direct representative who was the Father himself. He was a messenger version of the Father. So this is all throughout the Tanakh, everyone. This is shouldn't be a hard concept. This is all throughout the Tanakh. The word of Yahuwah is a person. It's not just a utterance of my mouth, like how some people will say. The Jewish understanding will be, oh, that's just Yahuwah's word being spoken. No, it's a person. A person came to Jeremiah. A person came to the prophets. A person came to them and said they're Yahuwah. And people called that person Yahuwah. So anyone that wants to say, oh well, the identity of Debar Yahuwah was never Yahuwah himself before John 1:1. There's tons of verses we can give you to show you that's not the case. And I'll just show you guys really quick in Jeremiah 1. Just for point of contention here. So Jeremiah 1. Okay, literally says word of Elua. Okay, the word of Elua, the person, the word of Elua, came to Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah of the priests, who dwelt in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin. So this is Yahusha pre-incarnate here. According as the word of Elua came to him in the days of Josiah, son of Amos, king of Yehuda, in the 13th of the year of his reign. And it was in the days of Jehoiakim. So we have the days of Jehoiakim, all that, but it's saying Yahusha came to speak to him face to face. Okay? And the word of Yahuwah came to him saying, Debar Yahuwah came to him saying, before I formed you in the belly. And by the way, there's no thus says Yahuwah here, so there's no way to try to rationalize agency here, okay? This is him speaking first person, saying that he's the one that made Jeremiah. I knew you before you came forth from the womb. I set you apart. I appointed you a prophet to the nations, and I said, oh, Yahuwah, he's calling the messenger, Malak Yahuwah, he's calling him, you, oh, Yahuwah, you are supreme, and you could pick whatever you want, Master Yahuwah, whatever. Point is, he's calling him supreme above all. Okay. Behold, I know that not how to speak, for I am a child. So the same situation where Masha is like, I'm impotent, or I'm omnipotent, or whatever it is. I forget the phrase, how it says not eloquent of speech. Basically, it's the same thing Jeremiah is saying to him here. So there's proof here right in the Tanakh that you had an idea of a visual version of the Father that would go to earth while the Father's up in heaven. You have a equal duplicate version of the Father sent to earth to talk to the Israelites. And that this was all throughout the Tanakh. This was not a new thing. So when John says one in John 1:1, he's going back to the Tanakh. This ain't new. I know a lot of people think this is a like that. That's why they don't want to interpret it as saying that Alu or Alihim here would be talking about the Father. They try to put a Jehovah Witness spin on this verse because they think it's something new. It's not something new. Okay, we've talked about this before, right? Genesis 19. You have Yahuwah on earth raining down Sodom and Gomorrah from Yahuwah in heaven. Now, to those that don't understand the oneness, they would think, wait a minute, that sounds like there's two Yahuwahs there. Well, yes and no. Yes and no, because we got to understand that you can't put a limit on the Most High. He can duplicate himself. He can make a second version of himself if he wants to. But no, it's not considered polytheism to have a Yahuwah here on earth and a Yahuwah up there in heaven. This is why Judaism moved away from that. They moved away from it because the person who claimed to be the other half, the visual representation of the Father, who claimed to be Debar Yahuwah, was the one they rejected. So once that happened, a couple centuries later, they deemed this oneness type belief that's similar to the oneness that we believe in. They deemed that as heresy in Judaism around the second century. But that wasn't deemed as heresy until 200 AD. So meaning that from all the way as early as the 6th, 7th century BC, all the way to like 100 BC or later, for like 800 years, they believed this oneness idea. All the Hebrews believed this. So what John says in John 1:1 is not separate from that. It's showing he's possibly talking to a Targumic audience of rabbis that believed in the Targum. That's why he writes this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yahuwah, okay? And the Word was Yahuwah. So you get what I'm saying? This is right here in John 1:1. Same thing in Genesis 19. One Yahuwah on earth, one Yahuwah on heaven. Same thing. It's no difference. It's the same type of theology. So this is the problem: is that we've inherited Judaism's idea of monotheism, and we put Yahuwah in a box that somehow he can't duplicate himself. Somehow he can't send a portion of himself to the earth to cohabitate with his creation. I mean, it's right there in Genesis. It's right there in Genesis 18, Genesis 19. It's right there in Genesis 5 in the genealogies that it's prophesied in the genealogy of Genesis 5. If you look at all the meanings of the patriarchs, Adam, man, Seth, appointed, mortal, sorrow, but the Baruch Elohim shall come down, meaning the Father, shall come down and teach that his death shall bring men rest. So, if that's the case, and it's in Genesis 5, and you already have the Basora, part of the Basora message in that chapter saying that the Father will come down, your only option is the Messiah has to be the Father. In some ways, shape, or form, there's going to be a portion of the Most High dwelling in human form, dying for us. It's only that's the only option you got, and it's right there in Genesis 5 in the genealogies of the patriarchs. Okay, and people want to say, oh well, that's because you know people will say, well, it's only in the Masoretic text you can get that, and these rabbis, the rabbis wouldn't want that, especially post Yahusha rabbis, they would not want that. So if you're going to claim that it's just the rabbis that put that in there with false meanings of the names, that makes no sense. They don't want to believe in Yahusha. Most post first century rabbis, those that, came after Yahusha's death and resurrection, they didn't believe in him. They wouldn't want that being put in their scriptures. So that whole argument about its rabbinical tradition, you got to ignore people that say that, okay? They really don't understand the arguments of the first century. They don't understand the arguments of rabbinical Judaism. They would not want to believe in that. I believe Yahuwah allowed that message to be in there with the genealogies to show that he is the Messiah. He was supposed to be, he himself, the Father himself, as his son, Yahusha, was supposed to be the Messiah. So moving on forward, we have more than enough historical scriptural evidence to show the Ebionite version of what the Messiah was supposed to be is wrong. Unitarians, the Unitarian position as a whole, even modern Unitarians today, is wrong. It's heretic. Okay, just that's point blank. It's wrong. So, anyway, so okay, nature of evidence. Da, 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 da. Denying the virgin birth would contradict Isaiah 7:14 and Genesis 14 to 15. So basically, guys, the virgin birth is talked about even before Isaiah. It's talked about in Genesis 3:14 to 15. Okay, and I'll just break it down very simply. He says, I will put enmity with the woman's seed and your seed, talking about the devil. No. And so you have basically a seed of a woman. Now, genetically, okay, as far as biology is concerned, a woman does not have a seed.
Right.
So what is he talking about? He's talking about the overshadowing of a virgin birth. Okay? Which means that the Ebionite idea of him just being a normal human birth is wrong. They're in error of that as well. Okay? Um, and let's see here. So they have zero scriptural support for their adoptionism belief that Yahusha became Yahuwah's son at the baptism. So we're going to go to a couple verses here to show you that from the beginning he was Yahuwah's son. This wasn't like, oh, he became Yahuwah's son at the baptism. No. And there's multiple places for this. Even going just starting at Matthew 3. Okay, Matthew 3:17. Okay, Yahuwah's calling him. Yahuwah and Yahusha, and this is how Yahusha can talk to Yahuwah. If you understand that Yahusha is a direct duplicate of the Father, okay, they can talk to one another, okay? You know? So this to me, the oneness understanding reconciles all this stuff. How Yahuwah from heaven as a dove can be talking to him, and he be the fullness of Yahuwah already before his baptism, okay? So it says here, and this is before, I think, is this before the dove entered? Or let's see here.
It's right at that.
Oh, okay. But it says a voice came out of heaven, not from Yahusha. Notice that. It says, and behold, a voice came out of heaven saying, this is my beloved son in whom I have found delight. Now, this again goes back to Proverbs 8. So some people might be saying, hey, Doug, but that's after the dove descended. Okay, fine. You want to use that? Fine. Let's go to Proverbs 8. Let's go. You always match scripture with scripture. You never take one witness. Okay? Right. So Yahuwah made me the beginning of his ways. It doesn't say he created me. It says he made me the beginning of his ways for his works. Proverbs 8:22. He established me in the beginning, before time was. Again, this goes right against what the Ebionites believe about Yahusha just being a mortal man. Okay? Before time was, meaning Yahusha existed before time was, before he made the earth. Yahusha existed before the earth existed. That includes the waters of the deep. That includes Genesis 1:1. Even before he made the depths, before the fountains of water came forth, before the mountains were settled, before all the hills, he what? Begot me. Oh, okay. So that means if he's begotten of Yahuwah, he's a son of Yahuwah from the beginning, not adopted. So this is why they don't hold to any of these other books. And that's something we're going to get to in this expose about. They had a very weird canon. And this is my speculation, is that they might have not been Marcionites, but they were very similar to Marcion, that they did not really accept a lot of the Old Testament. They accepted, I think they were one of those groups, if I was really to look into it deep enough, they were very similar to other groups that thought Ezra corrupted the Torah. So there were certain groups like the Samaritans that they were like, oh, we don't trust in that Torah because, all those other books were corrupted by Ezra. So that's why today the Samaritans only use their version of the Torah, the Samaritan Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books. And very similarly, it appears that the Ebionites only believed in the first 5 books of Moses. They didn't want to go anywhere past that. Because it would contradict with their belief system. But what's interesting about that, too, going to the animal sacrifice belief system that they were abhorrently against and thought it was demonic, if that's the case, then why even believe in the Torah? Genesis 3:21 starts with animal skins, okay? Now, anyone, pop quiz, how do you get animal skins on Adam and Eve? like actual skin of an animal. You would kill it, right?
Hmm.
So that means an animal, after the fall, an animal sacrifice had to occur, which means that Yahuwah had to atone with the animal as a foreshadowing of Yahusha's righteous sacrifice. No. And no, no. Basically, you have a first animal sacrifice right in Genesis 3, right there, where it talks about he gave them animal skins. Okay, so anyone tells you from like some weird Zadokite book or some weird fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls, oh well, they were never commanded by Yahuwah. Oh, really? Then why is Yahuwah telling Abraham to give offerings in Genesis 15? Why in Genesis 3:21 animals killed so that Adam and Eve can have animal skins? That whole doctrine is based on a false interpretation of one verse from Jeremiah or somewhere, where it talks about it never came into my mind to command sacrifices. Yahuwah is talking to a rebellious Israel at that point that had horrible lifestyles. And Yahuwah is like, I'm tired of your offerings because of your sucky lifestyle, because of your sinful lives you're leaving, not because he never wanted them to offer the blood of
Hmm.
bulls and rams. So again, you got to understand context. And that whole false belief system is promoted in several heretical books from the Dead Sea Scrolls, several of them. So this is how I know this must have been a very popular view around that time period. Um, and this is why Paul warns us about such people, warns us about people that promote religious vegetarianism, promotes, that he never, anyone that promotes that we can't marry or religious vegetarianism. Those are like two big things the Gnostics were very big about. Um, Now, so the next bullet point I have here, and we already talked about this, but I'll give you some scriptures you can give to some people about Yahusha's pre-existence, okay? Um, the whole scriptures prove Yahusha was always more than a mortal prophet and pre-existed and was Yahuwah himself. I'll just give you guys some, just to give you guys, and I might copy and paste it because there's gonna be a lot of scriptures I'm gonna spout out right now that prove this, and even from Second Temple literature. Okay, so I'll give you Genesis 1:27. Okay, in the Jerusalem Targum, the word of Yahuwah made man in his image. Okay. So that shows. All right. So Jerusalem. Okay. The word of Yahuwah made man, meaning men, in his image. Okay. You have that pre existence. Okay. Micah 5:2 talks about Yahusha's goings forth were from eternity, pre existence. Psalms 40, verse 6 in the Septuagint says, a body has been prepared for me. What does that mean? He preexisted his human body. Okay. So if the Ebionites don't believe in this stuff, they are rejecting the word. They are rejecting the scriptures that they so boldly claim to uphold. Okay. And that's why I say it's a very weird sect because they claim to believe in the Torah, but anything that shows that the Messiah was supposed to be a pre-existent being, they reject. And I wonder if they claimed that the Torah of their time was corrupted. This is something I want to look up real quick because I guarantee you this probably will show that there. I believe there could be a connection between the Samaritans and the Ebionites. Let me see. Did Ebionites believe the modern Torah was corrupted? And you'll see the same spirit in these pro Jubilees people today, these Kabbalist people today. Um, okay, they might not believe the Torah was corrupted, but they believed that the Gospel of Matthew was corrupted. That's funny. Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why. Because we've already went through one verse in Matthew that corrupts, not corrupts, that contradicts their own theology. So that makes sense.
I know there was one group of people that had their own version of Matthew because they believed uh, that Matthew was corrupted. Do you remember who that was?
Well, it seems like the Ebionites believed that they needed their own version of Matthew. I think it was called the Gospel of the Ebionites, actually. Let me see here. Gospel of the Ebionites. No, no, no. Yeah. All right. Epiphanius talks about it. Um, so according to him, the Gospel of the Ebionites was a harmony used by Jewish Christians called the Ebionites who believed Yahusha was a human prophet, not divine. The text is closely related to the Gospel of Matthew, but omits infancy narratives, includes or you could say additions about abolishing animal sacrifice and presents Yahusha as a vegetarian. Yeah. So basically their own revised version of Matthew. So that is the Gospel of the Ebionites. So yeah. Yeah, so they're the ones that would think that Matthew was corrupted and they had to make their own version of Matthew. Very similar to Marcion. These guys who had like the same spirit as Marcion, because Marcion, for those that don't know, was a Gnostic who was even far worse than their theology. He rejected Yahuwah, thought Yahuwah was the bad guy, called him the demiurge, and basically only believed in the epistles of Paul and nothing else. So like how you have these little baby Bibles today that are New Testament only, you can thank Marcion for that. Marcion was really the starter for that in the first century. So there you had a lot of heretics around in the first century. This is why Paul said, after my departure, wolves will come in.
Mm-hmm.
This is why Paul said, and this is why these people really hate Paul. This is
Yes.
why Paul's so attacked, is because he warned about heretics. He warned that
Yep.
he was almost prophesying that these guys are going to come in. You better watch them. You got guys like Marcion that come after him. You got guys like these Ebionites that come after him, obviously. Paul would have been dead by 70 AD. Okay, so there, these people came after him and tried to refute him because he warned us about them, essentially. And these people, the Ebionites, are pretty much where without them you would not even have Unitarian belief system today. You would not even have that today without them, because they're the main ones that were. And what I noticed too is the Ebionites. They're the one group the Muslims try to latch on to and say that people that believe that Yahusha is the father is wrong because of the Ebionites. The Ebionites were one of the most heretical sects ever. So to even try to use them as an argument, I find is hilarious. For a Muslim to use them as an argument. Okay, first of all, they did not believe in the Yahusha of Scripture, because even if you take away the oneness debate, they didn't believe in a virgin birth. They didn't believe that he preexisted. They didn't believe that he was Yahuwah's son from the beginning. They believed that he was adopted at the baptism. All that's heretical. All that's heretical. So the Muslims really should try harder and not be using one of the most heretical people for their argument. But anyway, so they had a weird canon of the scriptures, which were mainly, it seems like from what they taught, it was mainly the first 5 books of Moses, and a revised their own version of the Gospel of Matthew, which they seem to have coined the phrase the Gospel of the Ebionites. It seems like it was. They were also anti Paul, very anti Paul. They thought Paul was a heretic. So basically, a lot of Muslims like them because Muslims see Paul as the same thing. So they're most of these groups also misinterpreted Paul's letters to where they thought Paul was saying don't keep the law anymore. Okay, that's where all this anti-Paul stuff comes from. Their belief of the Messiah, like we talked about before, just a mere mortal man who kept the law perfectly and became the Messiah after the Ruach, which in their beliefs is portrayed as a messenger or a Malach entering Yahusha. So this is like one of the most heretical beliefs. And I hate to say it, a lot of people today that preach perfectionism in Torah keeping, they're kind of going on the lines with these guys. You're trying to make it look like Yahusha was just a righteous Israelite and we can be exactly like him. When you say that, you're kind of preaching like what they're preaching. You're kind of going, I don't even think it's intentional. I think it's unintentional. And a lot of people that don't believe he's the father, that's how they look at Yahusha. They look at him as just a mere righteous Israelite that was used by the father as a deliverer. Anyone that tells you that, they're holding on to Ebionite doctrine, whether they realize it or not. That's Unitarian doctrine. That's not. So again, it's very important to understand the Messiah was much more than just a perfect human. Okay, a perfect human cannot resurrect from the dead. A perfect human cannot, like in a supernatural way, walk on water. That's not about righteousness. That's about supernatural ability.
Mhm.
Because let me explain something. Physics, basic physics. You try to walk on water of
No.
yourself, your foot goes right into the water. That's
Mhm.
basic physics,
Gravity.
like basic science. Okay, biology even. Okay, Yahusha was not just a man. He was supernatural. He could do supernatural things. The reason that he said those that follow him would do such things is because he is in us.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit of Yahuwah is the spirit of Messiah, which is in us, causing us to do those things. Not us of ourselves, like biologically. We can't make cause miracles to happen of ourselves and all that. Go ahead, brother.
Um, sorry, your mom mentioned gravity, and I had to speak up.
Yeah.
So I
No.
I believe that gravity has actually never been proven. I believe it's actually just a theory, while as
Yeah.
the like on a flat Earth, the law of buoyancy and density would actually much it would better explain everything rather than gravity, I think.
Yeah. Magnetic. I forget if it's magnetic polarity or something. There's something to do with magnets on the flat Earth. I would have to look back into that stuff, but there's something to do with electric um, and stuff like that. Yeah, gravity. I agree. Gravity was basically the concept or theory of gravity was Newton had a freaking apple hit him on the head and say, "Oh, there must be gravity." And that's what he based it on. Apple. He deduced it, and they made fun of this mom actually in Frasier
Okay.
when Niles was arguing with Frasier in that one episode, and he's like, well, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm getting them confused with the Big Bang Theory. There was an episode in Big Bang Theory where Sheldon and the curly head guy, Leonard, like basically they were arguing with one another about their project. And he's like, oh, what? He's like, well, I'm kind of different than Isaac. Gravity would have been obvious without the apple, and they're kind of like making a joke out of it and because how ridiculous that is. The gravity is definitely not a real thing. It's there, but there is such thing as basic law of physics. There is such thing as I put my hand, I put a finger or toe on water, it's gonna sink. I'm not gonna. Yahuwah is above laws of physics. He's above nature. They're what they call in science is called supernaturalism above nature and naturalism. We are creatures that are that are conformed to naturalism. We can't do supernatural things of ourselves. So this is how we know Yahusha has to be supernatural because he did things of himself that we cannot do of ourselves. There was multiple things like the walking on water, this and that, and he never said out of his mouth that the Father gave him ability to walk on water. So some people will say, I know some people are going to say, oh well, Doug, Yahuwah gave him the Ruach gave him ability to do that. He never says that, and the apostles never think that. But what the apostles actually say when he doesn't just walk on water. He rebukes the ocean.
That's right.
You cannot be separate from the Father, separate being from the Father, and rebuke the creation. Okay? They even say, what nature of this man is he, that he does these things? He he commands the sea to stop. You can't be someone that's a mortal man and have authority to do that. You can't. So there's a lot of things that this heretical Ebionite belief system believed that you see today, with a lot of people in this movement that want to try to fully separate the Father from the Son and say that they're not one, they're just in unity, whatever. Okay, so moving on, the Tanakh itself and the Yashrulites themselves, Second Temple time period. Um, okay, so they would have disagreed with the Ebionites' belief system. Okay, the Second Temple time period Israelites, 600 BC to 100 BC. So what we call the intertestamental period, okay? And just Tanakh itself would contradict with the Ebionite belief of a human mortal deliverer as being the Messiah. Okay, Micah 5:2 example. Isaiah 7:14 example. Isaiah 9:6 example. Isaiah 7:16 in the Septuagint says that he would know to choose from to do evil before learning good from evil. Can you please tell me a regular human being that can do that? Let me know. Let me know. I'll wait. Okay. They also believed anyone who kept the Torah blamelessly could become the Messiah. So they believed messiahship was just an office. They believed the Messiah was just an office, that any mortal human that was righteous like a Noah or a Moses could be the Messiah. That is modern, mainstream now, modern Judaism way of thinking for the Messiah. It might have not been when the Targums were written, in the late BC time period, but by now they've adopted what the Ebionites would have taught. So I find that interesting. It might have been a Jewish thought process post Yahusha of changing the way they looked at the Messiah. This idea would have not been believed by the Abrim people. So what I'm trying to say is the idea that anyone who kept Torah perfectly could become the Messiah is basically this is a modern Jewish way of thinking about the Messiah, and the authors of the Targums, like I said before, would not believe that. The Israelites of the intertestamental period, 600 BC to 100 BC, did not believe that. The scriptures do not teach that the Messiah could be anyone that just follows the Torah perfectly. That's not what it teaches as the coming Messiah. Okay, so this was a very weird belief system that we see now in modern Judaism, in rabbinical Judaism. They believe anyone that brings peace to Israel, anyone that establishes world peace will be the Messiah. They don't believe in a celestial being taking human flesh as the Messiah anymore. So it's weird. This Ebionite belief system actually has poured into rabbinical Judaism at some point. And I would like to find out, just before we go here, when exactly that happened. How early we're talking about. So let me just see if there's anything else. So here we go. The Messiah, so Messiah is Yahuwah himself. Here's proof that the Messiah was supposed to be, as Yahuwah himself, or at the minimum, a co-equal creator. Okay. Daniel 7:13 agrees as well. So let me see here. I might have got cut off on the commentary here. Okay, so Targums clearly show the promised Messiah as Yahuwah himself. Daniel 7:13 agrees with this, saying showing the Son of Man figure as a pre-existent eternal being, co-eternal being. Okay. Their belief on the Ruach HaKodesh was opposite from the Hebrew concept. So, like what we talked about earlier in this study, how they thought the spirit was separate from Yahuwah and that it was like a almost like a messenger or an angel. That is completely opposite of the Orthodox Abri belief, the original Abri belief of the scriptures of what the spirit is. Okay. So their belief on what the Ruach HaKodesh was is opposite from the scriptures. It was closer to more of a Christ consciousness or spirit guide type of spirit. Okay. John 4:24 says Yahuwah, specifically from the Aramaic, Yahuwah is that spirit, meaning that the Ruach HaKodesh, the set apart spirit, is the Father. So if you're going to say that the spirit is just some heavenly being, you're now creating your own Trinity. So now you have, it might not be a polytheistic Trinity because they don't look at the Son as a mighty one, but it's still three people. It's like you got the angel who's the Ruach, you got Yahusha who's just a mortal man adopted by Yahuwah, and then you have the one creator Yahuwah. So it's still almost similar to a Trinity. Go ahead, brother.
That brings a couple things to mind. There was an Ak that I knew that he had brought that up at one point. Not on our side, but on. Um, Anyways, he had brought up like, okay, so you believe that Yahusha is the Father. Well, what about the Spirit? And I said, yeah, well, I believe the. And he mocked at that like, okay, like he was really just mocking about Yahuwah being Yahusha and the Ru being Yahuwah and the Ru being Yahusha and it not being three different people. And he was one that or it not being the same person. He was one that claimed to not believe in a Trinity, but by default, regardless of your terminology, like or what you want to define a Trinity as, it's still a Trinity. It's still three individuals. Whether those three individuals are united as one, whether they're regardless, it's still three. So it's always found that interesting. But it also touches on just the way that he was mocking about it. I think that I was talking with not to get too far off subject, but I was talking with an Ak, and I think we need to be not saying we are, and I'm just saying the body as a whole. We need to be really careful about how we go about bringing correction on a doctrine, and not come off as prideful, not come off as attacking, not come off as mocking. Not that Yahuwah doesn't mock, not that there isn't a time to mock the enemy, but when we're coming in correction of a doctrine to someone that believes in Yahuwah, we just need to do so in love. But yeah, not to get too far off topic. I don't know. That just came to mind.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Now this belief kind of trickles down into some other literature too. This is why I believe the Ascension of Isaiah might have been written by this sect of people, because it says like they're trying to like jump around. Stupid Google or whatever is trying to like hopscotch around the idea that it's a separate being from Yahuwah in their belief system. So what's interesting though is they're at least admitting here the Ebionites believed that Ruach HaKodesh was a heavenly divine being, not a person of the Trinity which descended. The infusion of a celestial power gave Yahusha his divine authority and ability to perform miracles. So this would mean that it's a separate heavenly being from the Father that somehow made him the Messiah. It's very similar to Christ consciousness. And New Age does have a lot of I just want to look up this real quick. The idea of Christ consciousness, if that's similar or not, because it sounds similar. So I just want to see New Age belief of. Just want to look this up real quick. Uh-huh, interesting. So it's somewhat similar, but not exactly. The one similarity there is that they would also believe that he's a regular mortal man who became the Messiah. So I wonder, yeah, I wonder if this idea really comes from the Gnostics, that he became, I want to see something here. Do Gnostics believe became yeah, yeah, just as I feared. Interesting. This is why I bring this stuff out. So separationism comes from the Gnostics. Interesting. Interesting. Many Gnostics believed he became the Messiah at his baptism, a view known as adoptionism. So the Ebionites definitely were Gnostics. There's no doubt about it. So people, and this is why and again, guys, if I ever come off as prideful, that's not what I'm trying to do. When I emphasize, I'm just emphasizing. I'm not poking fun at you. I'm emphasizing for a reason. I emphasize. I'm Italian. I emphasize. Okay. I when I'm making a strong point, I get a little loud and animated. I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm not trying to come off as prideful. So I apologize if that ever to anyone came off as prideful. Um, so that's just I just want to put it out there. Okay. So, but this is right here what I mean by why the Kaledi book from last study is so dangerous. It is a Gnostic book. Okay, it is Gnosticism. You are receiving Gnosticism. Even if you unintentionally, this is not about intentions, guys. Even if you unintentionally receive it, you're receiving Gnostic doctrine. Point blank. That's what it is. And it's very clear. Even Google gives you the answer. All you got to do is search on Google. Did the Gnostics believe he became the Messiah after his baptism? Oh, okay, they did. It's very easy to research, guys. Very easy to research this stuff. Separationist view. This is the most common Gnostic belief. Oh, really? You mean the separation of Yahusha is a Gnostic belief? And they probably didn't believe that until the Gnostics came around? Yeah, that's important to understand. Because that means historically, this whole idea that he's the unique son, but yet he's not Yahuwah, you mean that didn't come about until the Gnostics? Yeah. So that's important to understand. Okay. This is the most common Gnostic belief where a divine spiritual being, probably they define, Messiah as a messenger, entered into a human. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me correct myself. So separationism, this type of separationism is more about that the Messiah is a heavenly being and that Yahusha was just a mortal man and he transformed into the Messiah at his baptism. Okay, I'll take correction on that. So that I screwed up on that. Okay. But there is also doctrine of separation where like I was more thinking when I first saw the word separationism, like the son and father, two separate beings. That's what I was thinking of. Um, the Christ enters at baptism, yada yada yada. Yeah, so but this still pinpoints the Ebionites as Gnostics. So they would also believe that the Messiah spirit, which is like almost like an angel, left him at the crucifixion. Which then you're almost getting into angel worship at that point. If you see what I'm saying, like if the Ruach's now an angel and it's not Yahuwah, and the Ruach left him at the crucifixion, then he's calling a messenger the Most High. Just think about it, right? Then they would believe, Father, why have you forsaken me? They would believe just a divine being he's calling Father. So that gets a little weird to me. That's almost like angel worship. That's like not direct angel worship, but like around the way. You're gonna get tempted into angel worship with that, or I should say Malachim worship. So very weird to me. This is a key difference from. Okay, so but again, adoptionalism heretical. The idea that he's not the Messiah until his baptism, heretical. Okay. All these things are dangerous doctrines of the Gnostics. And this is why we're talking about this today. Because a lot of us in this walk, I hate to say it, the majority of the body of Messiah, and I'm not trying to pull fingers, but a lot of you guys are like halfway Kabbalists and Gnostics, and you don't even realize it. You're preaching Kabbalist doctrine. You're preaching Gnostic doctrine from the Dead Sea Scrolls and from people like the Ebionites. Got to stop. I say this lovingly. Please get rid of these false doctrines, please. You're leading people astray. You're leading people to another Basora. Okay? And I just want to leave you with this Galatians 1:8. Because just proclaiming you believe in Yahusha, or you just proclaiming that you believe in Yahusha, but then you're preaching another Yahusha, doesn't mean you're really in the faith, okay? And this is a dangerous thing to be guilty of, guys, is preaching another Yahusha or another good news, okay? So it says here, and this is Paul's words, not my own, okay? But even if we or a messenger from heaven should preach a glad tidings to you that has not been preached to you, that we have not preached to you, let him be accursed. As we have said it before, I say again just now, if anyone preaches a glad tidings to you that you have not received, meaning you've not received from true apostles, okay, let him be accursed. And if you go look at the word accursed, it can also mean damned, okay? Because if you think about it, Yahusha took the curse for us. He became accursed on a tree for us. So sometimes a curse can actually mean damned. So this is a salvational issue, guys. It's not just about verbally proclaiming you believe in Yahusha. Do you believe in the right one? Do you believe in the Yahusha that's in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and even in Genesis, and even in Tanakh as well? Or do you believe in a Yahusha of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Do you believe in the Yahusha of the that weird Nazarene book over the Yahusha of the Scriptures? It matters. It matters. And I can assure you, even if you receive a lot of what he's portrayed as in the scriptures, but you change anything of his character, you're in that danger zone. Okay. And that includes, and I'll leave you with this. It was part of the good news. His oneness is part of the good news. People say this is not a problem, it's not an issue. Okay, I'm gonna leave you with this because this is I'm gonna go to the screenshot that I shared with brother Yahusha earlier this week. No. So let me see if I can find it real quick. So okay, now again, this is another one, but the first one is really the one I want to actually show here. Okay. So right here it says in 2 Corinthians 4:4, lest the light of the glad news of the esteem of the Messiah, who is the image of Elua, should dawn upon them. Okay, so basically, it's the concept that Yahusha being Yahuwah is part of the good news. It's not a separate optional thing. It's part of it. Paul is saying he's the exact representation of him again in that verse. And he's saying the good news is connected to that. Okay. He's actually calling the Basora of Yahusha. Okay. Lest the light of the glad news of the esteem of the Messiah, who is the image of Elua should dawn upon them, meaning they're blinded to not receiving Yahusha as Yahuwah. That's what he's saying. It's very clear. Says the God of this world. Who's the God of this world? Satan has blinded them because they do not believe, and the part that's in highlight is what they don't believe. So people that want to say, "Oh, it doesn't matter," and again, I'm not attacking you guys. I'm just saying doctrine matters. Doctrine matters. You can't just preach any type of Yahusha you want because you have a problem with something, or you you were raised maybe in a Trinitarian Protestant belief system, so you're afraid to receive anything that's close to the Trinity or similar to the Trinity. Whatever it is that's holding you back from receiving the oneness, I would pray today that Yahuwah takes down that barrier, because this is a salvational issue. This is not to each his own, agree to disagree. This is a salvational issue. This is whether or not you're in the faith or not. This is that serious. Okay. So I love you guys. Even when we disagree, I love you guys. I hope you guys receive this and honestly really rethink about some of the stuff. A lot of the body has been reading right now. They really need to pitch a lot of this stuff. We always talk about this. You guys need to start pitching Jubilees, Jasher, their Judean fables. You need to stop adhering to stuff that is opposite theology of the scriptures just because you like a little bit of it. It's complete opposite theology. It's very obvious to see when Yahuwah's Ruach shows you. It's very obvious. These things are not like deeper things. This is like what does Genesis to Revelations teach versus what some random scribe at some point after Yahusha's death wrote, because that's really all these books really are. They're just random scribes, putting their opinions there, and they'll put a little bit of truth in it,
Yeah.
like the devil usually does. He gets people to write fake books. They'll put a little bit of a cross reference here and there, and catch you with just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But a lot of these literatures are just they're mostly Kabbalistic, Gnostic. That's where most of them in the categories fall. It's one or the other. Most of that literature is just Kabbalistic, Gnostic, and that's really that's what you got to do, guys, is research. When you're testing these books, it's called testing. You don't automatically receive something because you want to. Okay? It's you got to test it whether it is really scriptural or not. And if it at all contradicts and at any point, and I'll get to you in a second, bro. I know you got your hand up. I just want to finish saying that even and I understand the argument that there's contradictions in this. I get it, but on a theology, overall theology, I'm talking about of the Bible. If a book contradicts even once with the overall consistent theology of Genesis to Revelations, it's not scripture. It's just not. It's man's opinions, maybe a Hebrew's opinions that he wasn't all together on theology, and he's writing a book of combined belief systems. A lot of those books are that, like the Ascension of Isaiah is mixed belief systems. The Apocalypse of Abraham, mixed belief systems. All these books are just mixed belief systems of some scribe that in no way, shape, or form, can be inspired by Yahuwah if it's going against Yahuwah's word. If it's saying something directly opposed to Yahuwah's word, and that goes with these Ebionite guys, and that goes along with the Nazarene book. Go ahead, brother.
I forget.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully you guys took something away from today. And like you said, if you got questions, feel free. I know you guys usually go on the comment section anyway. Just feel free. What I would suggest is if you guys have any questions about this topic, I want these comment sections to really stay on topic. Like if you got, I mean, I understand if you got a question, you just want to ask me something about it. I would rather I would rather you find me on social media somewhere or DM me something like that. I don't like to fill up a whole comment section on a separate topic from the study because then it confuses people that watch stuff and they're like,
Hmm.
go ahead, brother. I don't know if that's a new hand,
No,
old hand.
I just didn't take my hand up.
Okay. All right. But yeah, I want us to start organizing the
Yeah.
comments section a little bit better because there's
Hmm.
been too many times where people send like I don't even think they try to do it, but they're just it's on their mind and they ask me something that has nothing to do with the study, like remotely.
Hmm.
Like and you guys have my social media links attached to the ministry. You guys can DM me. If you need my email, even comment on the comment section, Doug, I want to email you. I have no problem with that. Just please don't comment about something that's completely off topic. Like, I'm trying to think of an example recently was like I had a comment where someone was like, attacking Paul, and the study wasn't even about defending Paul. Like, that's a perfect example. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this is not opinion tube, guys. This ministry is not for you to put your own opinions forth as fact. Please don't go into the comment section to try to do that. Please. Please. This is not opinion tube, okay? All right. So anyway, so hopefully you guys got something out of it. Shabbat shalom. No. And hopefully to see you guys next time. Shabbat Shalom, all of our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah, Yahusha, and all. I wanted to thank brother Yahu Nathan who shared our defending Paul study from 5 years ago. I really thank you for that, Ak. Thank you for sharing that. Shalom.